This is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel being broadcast online from London in the UK. This is just after 09:10 hours GMT. This is timed at 09:15, but we are starting a few minutes earlier than stated. This is the Daily Mail on the front page. The top of the page says about the verdict in the trial of the racist policeman who murdered George Floyd. And the main splash is defeat of greed. This is about the football European Super League. As we said yesterday, the Super League was not an accident or one-off. It was actually a continuation of the corruption of football by big business that had gone on for the last 20 years or more. And the Daily Mail is running a dishonest and completely false headline, defeat of greed. It's not defeat of greed at all. Two things have happened, as I said yesterday. The Boris Johnson regime, or Boris Johnson fronted cabal of the government, was marooned in the face of by the allegations of corruption concerning or featuring David Cameron as the central element in the corruption, but it didn't only involve David Cameron. It involved all the other conservatives, including Johnson himself. But temporarily, Johnson needed the flak to be taken by Cameron. And the other is the serial incompetence and acts of negligence and criminality associated with Johnson's administration. And the use of the term greed in the piece that says it's a defeat of greed is stunningly corrupt of the Daily Mail, which boasted only a few weeks previously that greed was good and attributed that boast to none other than Johnson. And the rest of Lee Street are doing the same thing today, saying words to that same effect, that it was a defeat for greed. But greed is what makes the Conservatives. Greed is what makes David Cameron. And greed is what makes the Daily Mail and the Daily Mail group. So it's a completely corrupt and criminally untruthful line that the Mail is running. And here is an admission of just what I said. How football sold its soul years ago. Exactly. So the Daily Mail is corrupt even in its own contradictions and lying. And it is the very promoter of greed. And they are even now, after the verdict yesterday, the guilty verdict against Chauvin, the murderer, Derek Chauvin. They're promoting him shielding him as a bully, a bullying loner, not as a racist, a bullying loner, not a racist. And they've got a picture of this woman called Kelly Sheong, described as his ex-wife of this murderer. I mean, she was frothing in the mouth with praise for him. And then within 2 days of his murdering George Floyd, she filed for divorce and her opinion changed. I mean, completely opportunistic and dishonest. And the lying Daily Mail has got another promotion for Rachel Riley. Now, Rachel Riley is employed on Channel 4's Countdown and overhyped as a mathematical genius. But she's not known for her ethical kind of genius, because she agreed to take part in the demonization of Jeremy Corbyn. And now they're saying the stalking laws just do not work. What does she expect? In a system of kind of legal corruption, legalized corruption of the legal system, legal bureaucracy, none of the wanted, stated, claimed principles is upheld objectively. I mean, it's very, very rare when it is upheld. But there has to be something exceptionally kind of compelling beyond the capacity of ordinary people who need and seek remedies through the corrupt legal system. I mean, when they tried yesterday's kind of evidence about the role of the Metropolitan Police, a number of London Metropolitan Police personnel have been implicated in openly, knowingly allowing the spy police person to continue abusing, sexually abusing the target of his spying. Now, this is not some kind of myth. It is being admitted by people in the police. that they've been knowingly breaking the laws and knowingly colluding and being complicit with the, in effect, rape, systematic rape over years of the victim of the spying is much worse than anything Rachel Riley could say about her experience. And there is no sign whatsoever that the police are going to be held to account or held accountable. So this own goal by the I newspaper about this Super League is a celebration that is false. Because how was it that suddenly, all of a sudden, within 24 hours, these big football clubs are changing their tune and changing their kind of position, part in the European Super League. Because, as it says, the cover story in the I newspaper on pages 6 and 7, we are saying Johnson, but they are saying PM. So we are saying Johnson threatens legislative bomb to rein in football's billionaire owners. The war of language, the language of war. This is too much. Because only the previous 48 hours, Johnson and the rest of his cabal were sunk, submerged in the sea of sleaze that was being spread by David Cameron and his associates. That is, the central government itself was in Haque, that is to say, shown to be in awe of under the command of the likes of Lex Greensill, the Australian criminal. So they needed something very, very fast, and the Super League kind of plot provided that fast track diversion from Johnson being sunk in the sleaze and corruption. They're saying, and we commented on that saying yesterday, and by they, I'm saying that they're not all kind of official supporters of the Conservatives. Some of the comments that have helped the perpetuation of the myths that the crook David Cameron needs and needed come from anti-conservative kind of quarters, including the European so-called newspaper. Now, the European came into being immediately after Brexit was, quote, decided in 2016. And the New European, its name is New European, not the European, but the New European. And it's written mainly by current or former, quote, Fleet Street journalists, with the pretension that they are not like the Fleet Street media narrative and agenda pushers. But that's a lie. because beneath the pretense that they are supporters of the UK being in the European Union, they have absolutely no honesty at all, no rigor whatsoever. And this lack of honesty and lack of rigor has plagued all arguments against Brexit and Brexiteers. And it is still doing it, despite the fact that the likes of Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, all the kind of high-profile promoters of Brexit, have been found to have been lying about the European Union, about the impact and the implications of Brexit. And none of them has been prosecuted. And the same thing they have said, these are the people who have been saying that although Cameron has done wrong, he has not broken any rules. That is the stupidest statement to make. Just look at the European Union on the one hand and the UK on the other. The UK doesn't have a formal constitution, that is, formal written constitution, but it has got lots and lots and lots of conventions, legal conventions, constitutional law conventions, and it is dominated by common law, still dominated by common law. So even if Cameron hasn't broken any rules, he's still guilty of crimes that he has committed. And the crimes include the crimes as defined in the textbook about common law definition of crimes. And he has broken criminal law because fraud is part of criminal law and crime. So instead of showing fake outrage and then kind of staging over about turn by denying that he has broken any rules, the correct ethical kind of action that must be taken to stop the kind of corruption that Cameron perpetrated and others are still perpetrating, and Cameron is being kind of aided and abetted in this current phase of being kind of asked to provide to MPs, the select committee, all the texts that he sent to government, including the ones that he sent to Rishi Sunak, the finance minister. These are tinkering. Of course, they're part of the evidence. But saying that as a headline thing, like he's saying in the Financial Times, in the briefing on page 1, item 3, it is saying Cameron told to hand in green seal texts. I mean, everything known about Cameron so far, following the investigation by the Financial Times into this sleazy behavior. Because it was the Financial Times that carried the main initial publications of anything wrong done by Cameron. So they're saying that Cameron has been asked to here, asked to provide the texts. But the texts that have already been referred to and mentioned in the main reporting done by the Sunday Times, although the Financial Times kind of began the run on Cameron in March, is the Financial Times has not carried out the front page explosive headlines about Cameron. It is the Financial Times as rival, so-called in commercial terms, in circulation terms. The Financial Times has no big Sunday presence, but apart from the fact that they don't have a Sunday presence, it's the Sunday Times that has done the main reporting that has actually been noticed by the government and the others. Despite all these big headlines and the reported state of Cameron being in shock and in distress, none of the perpetrators of corruption by the media and the control of the government by the media, like happened in the evidence that was heard and seen in the so although the Sunday Times did the big splashes and Cameron was told to be kind of honest and disclose all the information that passed between him and the government departments and civil servants and all the others, including the disclosures that followed, including, in fact, several disclosures that showed that several existing employees in the government were also employed by or engaged by or working for the same Lex Grand Seal. So Cameron was one of the lawbreakers there. And these are breaches of the basic covenants that underlie any government, whether that government is governed by a written constitution or not. These are universal covenants, if you like, that every government worth any name must have in order to stay in office. So suddenly this Football Super League comes up and Cameron is off the front pages. He's no longer there. This is absolutely corrupt. And now the Daily Mail today is bragging that the greedy ones have been defeated. It was the Daily Mail and the Scum and others who celebrated greed only a few weeks previously. The greed that Johnson was boasting of about his alleged success in dealing with COVID-19. And in the last kind of 24 hours, of course, they have, I'm sure, manipulated out of their records all evidence, high-profile evidence of high-profile boasting about being greedy. So we shall be continuing on that evidence later, but let's take a look at the Financial Times and the theme that we introduced the campaign for worldwide free treatment for sick animals. It's a big project, but this is a big issue. And we didn't see this because it is only published today in the Financial Times when we started that campaign 3 days ago. But here is an acknowledgement of what our analysis has said beforehand about the veterinary business. It's called the big read in the Financial Times, and it's slotted under medical services. On page 21 of the Financial Times is saying that veterinary care is being transformed by rapid acquisitions. While some welcome the change to a sector once dominated by small local practices, that fuel drive is also prompting a political backlash. Private equity's bet on a cottage industry. Well, for a start, it's not a cottage industry. The whole purpose behind our launching of the campaign for worldwide provision of service for care of sick animals is connected with the fact that the veterinary business has been, for a very long time, for too long, way out of the reach of ordinary people with ordinary means, ordinary income, because it is absolutely not just the same amount of cost for a person, living cost. Going to a vet with a sick animal requires thousands of pounds in the actual detail of the treatment and care. That is simply not available. There is no source of income for ordinary people looking after and living with animals that can begin to match even a fraction of the cost. So it's a deadly, literally deadly, it's a killing business. And it has been kind of allowed, this criminality and this criminal industry. It's not caring for sick animals. It's a criminal industry which has been exploiting people's emotions. And that is the kind of weapon they have been using in order to subdue people's objections, even expressions of concerns about the unaffordable, completely impossibly high costs of veterinary treatment for sick animals. Now it's a space, it's a area of society that is allowed, that has been allowed for too long, that has been allowed to be kind of treated as if it has got impunity from accountability. Everyone who cares for and loves animals knows that any discomfort to the animal affects them very deeply. Much more deeply than people ordinarily realize. And this is something that should have been recognized long time ago. And animals should have been given the recognition that they've always deserved. They don't speak human languages, okay? Not as we know them today. I mean, if things change, technology changes, and if the planet survives, I'm absolutely certain that animals' communications would be recognized or recognizable by human beings. And once that is done, human beings will be able to see the devastating truth. The devastating truth of the exploitation of animals that is done by this industry. And because there is this endless amount of emotion involved in the persons being faced with these huge bills, the bats industry can not only exploit, but inflict severe intentional cruelty on the people who care for and live with animals and are at the disposal at the time of the animals' illnesses. Disposal of the cruel veterinary industry. It's not just the licensed veterinary medicine practitioners, but the whole bureaucracy, the whole staff and the establishment at every vet is able to inflict pain, suffering on the owners, so-called, or the human companions of the animals. This is something that is not, of course, not reported by Fleet Street or by its counterparts, Fleet Street counterparts in other regions and jurisdictions. And in the case of the Fleet Street perpetrators, there are joke pieces about animals. And animals are still treated as joke beings. There are very small exceptions when they report about cruelty to animals, but essentially, animals are disrecognized by Fleet Street and by the mainstream media, and of course by parliaments and others. So we shall go back to the animals later, and we shall continue the campaign for animals, sick animals needing health care, to be able to be treated with the highest standard and care, but at no cost to the owners. That's the principle. Now, if owners, who will be very, very rare indeed, let's say this campaign for total availability of totally free treatment to the animals, it's actually very rare number of people who can afford to pay the cost. So when I say that these treatments should be made free at the point of need, I really mean that, because the very, 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 very small number of people who, quote, own animals very small number. The majority can't afford. And I'm asking the United Nations to join this campaign, not make kind of comments, banal comments from the sidelines. They should actually join the campaign for the food. They should actually join the campaign to make it possible for all the animals to be treated, all the animals to be treated for free. Now that means that the people who are in the kind of licensed veterinary medicine field, the people who are able to afford the course, as I said, they can be very small. And even if they are able to pay, that payment should not be kind of denied. And the overall campaign should have 247 facility, which we need to be funded. We need funding for the worldwide kind of campaign operation, to have round the clock personnel dealing with queries and dealing with the need to update on the campaign and the appeal. There is a kind of comparison with the National Health Service in the UK. As we've been saying, since the beginning of the foundation of the NHS, the idea of the NHS, that is healthcare at the point of need, free healthcare for everyone who needs healthcare at the point of need. The idea was that the persons needing healthcare be given the healthcare at the highest level, highest standard. Now, this has, of course, in practice, been totally, fundamentally changed. And that change has been brought about by the consultants and other agents of the pharma companies and anti-NHS operations, gaining access into the NHS, becoming permanent doctors and consultants and other staff that have repeatedly committed murders and have been allowed to get away. And the amount of money that a worldwide facility would need is still a fraction of the money being wasted by the billionaires and trillionaires and by the corrupt and anti-democratic, warmongering states. That is what is happening. So what we need is an end to warmongering, war trading, and the diversion from the war proliferating kind of arsenals, the funds that would amount to trillions of dollars should be diverted into both human care, health care, human rights as evident in the realities of lack of jobs on the one hand, and the other is the political kind of platforms. There should be persuaded, let's say, by the evidence of the impact that lack of health care has on both the humans and on the animals. There is no need for war, is there? And there is no need for hatred based on artificial kind of elements. So we shall be continuing on that twin kind of platform or twin kind of narrative for the humans and for the sick animals. Free treatment, housing to be provided. Now, even if there are hundreds of millions of people in low income and in no permanent housing, not making any distinction between continents, wherever these people exist, wherever the people need the health and social welfare, should be made available to the people needing the welfare and the support. Now the government can make hundreds of provisions, and that is not currently in the narrative, in the commentary, in the publications of the Fleet Street, where occasionally, very occasionally, the support that has been so far given to these initiatives, let's say, not of the scale that will be needed in our narrative, but whatever the provisions, all these provisions have been contaminated by negative captions to the particular projects. And that contradiction defeats the purpose of having the helpful provision where human beings and separately the animals concerned can be treated with no payment by the recipients, but payments by the government department and the international outfit, the campaign for free treatment of animals, and its location in the particular, or its branch or branches located in the particular country. Now, if these people are, the people in need of help, and they approach the particular initiative that we have jointly started with the animals, okay, so we shall come back to the details, contextually updated. And we shall be looking now at the comment in the Financial Times today about Joe Biden's kind of policies. This is a very stupid piece in the Financial Times by the Indian origin, very corrupt, right-wing kind of mental slave called Janan Ganesh. Now, Janan Ganesh is a liar, because what he's saying there is that any overdue pro-social measures that Joe Biden's administration takes is not genuine. And that instead of allowing Joe Biden to make the decisions on the policy, the alternative to him should be imposed by the states concerned. Now, he's saying, Janan Ganesh, that Biden is making these, he cannot say that they're wrong, so he is doing the next possible thing he can say. He's saying that Biden is doing something right, which Trump kind of did the opposite of. And hundreds of millions of people in America are still bearing the brunt of what Trump did. So, Janan Ganesh is saying that although Biden is doing something right, it would not last. Can you believe that? Instead of welcoming what the Biden administration has started to do, Ganesh is saying that whatever he's doing is not going to last. And in order to show that he's recognizing the Democrats, he is even praising, in a backhanded manner, praising what policies had been taken by Bill Clinton and after that by Barack Obama, both of whom, of course, Democrats. So what's the point of this Janan Ganesh piece today in the Financial Times? Because Ganesh, although he's Hindu and Indian origin, he is another criminal, nephew Tom. This, and is part of the racist propaganda that the likes of Melanie Phillips, Andrew Brilopad Neal, and Pierce Moron identify with. And they attack the targets of their criminal, poisonous lies and untruths by labeling the targets and the anti-racists and the anti-big capitalist campaigners as woke. It's a language, the word woke belongs in the gutters, in the darkness. Anything that reverses Trump's racist, authoritarian, cruel, uncaring, negligent records and policies, they condemn and they want to undermine that as being woke. As the headline is a giveaway. Corporate America's woke moment won't last. Now, that is total fabrication. It's a show off by a degenerate, immoral, self-serving parasite of his own orientations and own career. Because this Janan Ganesh was for too long given platforms on the BBC television. And this criminal is condemning ethical behavior as a bad thing, as grim. He's not hiding, and he's not Steve Bannon. He's not Trump. He is an Indian Hindu with a clearly Indian face in terms of the complex. So he's not hiding, he's brazenly taking the side of racists. And in the Indianapolis murder, 4 out of the 8 victims of the shooting were Indians. And this is, instead of talking about that, because the Indian government and Indian kind of media have both registered oppositional concern at the fact that 4 Indians were murdered in the Indianapolis shooting only a few days ago. This Ganesh, this criminal, is ignoring all of that. And he is praising the murderous racists. That's what it amounts to. He's saying that anything being done by Biden in an ethical way is a grim thing. So there is a warning against diversity of that sort. It's just like him promoting the same line as Tori Sewer and Munira Mirza and the other criminals in collusion with, complicity with Boris Johnson in Britain. In the Mail today, Allegra Stratton, the right-wing woman who condemned an employee of Harmless Council for having the audacity to be poor or in low income and have an opinion or something. This Allegra Stratton is married to another conservative, and the fact that she is married to a conservative kind of self-serving propagandist liar, we are making that comment, not anybody else. And the significance of that statement, that we are making this comment, not anybody else, is in the fact that widespread infections by racism and neo-fascist kind of moves being taken by Boris Johnson, these are going uncommented on by the so-called opposition, including by the so-called socialist. I mean, there is no evidence anywhere in the mainstream that the so-called socialists operating in Britain are really socialists. I mean, these are so corrupt that they actually backed Luther Roman. Even after Luther Roman was found guilty of corrupt practices by the election court commissioner, who immediately ruled that Luther Roman should be ousted from that office, that post of executive elected mayor, because Luther Roman said Richard Morey, Luther Roman had behaved dishonestly, and he listed, as I have been reading from his ruling, he listed paragraphs after paragraphs after paragraphs of evidence, and evidence-based wrongdoing by Luther Roman. So that's essentially, that is the context. So while Melanie P. and others in Britain have been in denial of the existence of racism and the impact of racism, people, even the likes of the United Nations, are forced to agree that this is a cover-up, this was a cover-up. And if a comparable number of people of African and Asian backgrounds were kind of affected by the negligent attitude to racism, and if these victims of racism, negligent in attitude and behavior and policies, took the claim against racism and racist victimization to the existing courts of law, they won't get anywhere. That will prove the brazen existence of institutional racism. Now, when the racists call anti-racists woke, they don't do that on the evidence, and they don't do that honestly. So why are they given the platforms at all? Why is Janan Ganesh given this stupid platform to spew his stupidities? In the Financial Times, of all places. And I think that the answer is that the Financial Times is part of the racist mainstream media. And it knows that, and that's why we call the Financial Times moral crimes, financial crimes. Even the occasional sort of big read that the Financial Times actually produces, each one is contaminated by the fact that it distorts and denies the existence and role of campaigners that point out the basic facts. Now, the Financial Times has benefited in the main from its corrupt, criminal kind of promotion and propaganda for the robbers of the society. So it has got people like the Janan Ganesh and others not quite telling the truth, but at the same time pretending to be telling the truth. That's what the Financial Times symbolizes, and that's why we call it financial crimes. And every aspect, every kind of editorial, every letter, every kind of opinion in the Financial Times is as toxic as I have just described and as it is today, and as Janan Ganesh embodies and personifies. In the case of India, the Indian central government, fronted by Narendra Modi, Modi is now growing a very long beard. In fact, it could reach the beard, unless controlled. The beard presentation of Narendra Modi is part of the same agenda that has been violating people across occupied Kashmir and across Ganesh was given a platform by Andrew Brylopadney on the BBC, along with Isabella Oakeshott. And both Oakeshott and Ganesh were supporters of Brexit. I mean, Ganesh and Isabella Oakeshott were allowed the platform on the BBC in the full knowledge that they were taking part in a criminal project. That is to say, they are perpetrating criminal lies and lying. And they were doing that at the expense of the license fee payers. Whatever amount of money, resources were used to inflict on viewers that particular slot that Andrew Brylopadney fronted, all the lies that they perpetrated were allowed to go unchallenged. Now, the letters to the editor of the Times are, of course, collectively represent the racist exclusion by the Times and the racist perpetuation of the pretension that wisdom, intelligence, insight all belong to white people. The fact that George Floyd was murdered was not as a surprise. The fact that his murderer has been found guilty of all charges is not a surprise. So what am I saying? I'm saying that while this trial was taking place, 2 or 3 other black persons have been shot dead or murdered by police, not far from the area or the location of where the trial was taking place, not very far in the context of the American map. So, although he has been found guilty, that will not stop the racist murders of black people by police. So anyone who is tempted to parade, as the Daily Mail is doing, that the verdict was a positive kind of move, is wrong, because of the fact that others are not being deterred by the fact of Derek Chauvin being tried and now being found guilty of murder and other offenses, which requires the United States and Biden to take far-reaching initiatives to put an end to crimes of hatred, hate crime and racist crimes against predominantly black men, and to create the culture of the hate criminals being put on trial, whether they're men or women, and being found guilty, and they must be given serious lessons in the actual sentence that they're given. We shall talk about Allegra Stratton later, not this part, because Allegra Stratton, wife of the overhyped mental teenager James Forsyth, who is attached to the Daily Boris Graph and also the Mail Group and the Spectator, of course. We shall diagnose the media's coverage of the verdict and also the role of Allegra Stratton, who has now been shafted out of the overhyped slot that she was overly promoted to be presenting. White House style televised press conferences. Why did they think that White House style was a unique and uniquely qualified example of anything? We shall be talking about Allegra Stratton because her route to number 10 Downing Street has included her appearance, in fact. Allegra Stratton was previously employed at The Guardian, and she made her kind of strategic appearances on the BBC television as one of the reviewers of Fleet Street papers. Nothing like what we do. She was smiling and she was putting on that soft exterior to hide the very cruel internal identity. Now she moved away from The Guardian and took a job at the BBC Newsnight. Sorry, BBC News. Yes, Newsnight, before moving on to ITV. While she was editing, so she was engaged or installed at the BBC Newsnight, she made a typically racist claim. While at the Newsnight, she insulted a woman employee in Terminus Council. That woman was actually in significant low income. And Allegra Stratton condemned that woman for being in low income and also being a mom. And she made a suggestion that poor people shouldn't be allowed to have children, or words to that effect. Now, that was something that was not known at the time to be so potentially damaging, but it was potentially damaging because Boris Johnson believes in the same arrangement in society, though it's a Darwinian arrangement. So no surprise, therefore, that Allegra Stratton was taken away from the clutches of the BBC and placed in a central capacity in the finance minister's kind of brief, which was Sajid Javid gave her the kind of job. Now, Allegra Stratton, whether she did work for other parts of the BBC, doesn't matter, because her aptitude and attitude so when she made that kind of remark, she was noted, of course, by all the Darwinists, including by Boris Johnson, who then picked her up as a front for his operation that was wrongly styled and copied after the White House version. But it became very clear that Allegra Stratton would not do that job. It became very clear. Although nobody said that she would not do the job, we actually felt that she was unsuitable and she would not last in that over high post, which is what has happened. Because the baggage around her is heavier, much heavier than any benefits that she could bring to the image of Boris Johnson. So, we shall be talking more about this in the next parts whenever they're broadcast.